We're learning that Jeffrey Epstein reportedly was trying to set Prince Andrew up to extort the Queen. That's according to financial advisor John Bryan, who also dated the Prince Andrew's ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson. Epstein blackmailed rich men and made them pay to avoid scandal, is what he's claiming. He said, quote, "I believe Andrew is innocent. If he was genuinely involved, as alleged, Epstein would have used that to try and bribe the Queen into paying millions to protect her family."
Well, Prince Andrew has denied any wrongdoing. He settled a lawsuit with Virginia Giuffre, one of Epstein's victims, back in March of this year. Robby, how do we know, or how does John Bryan know that Epstein didn't try to bribe the Queen?
We don't. Right? I mean, I don't know.
I mean, are there some kind of disclosures of the royal pocketbook that would make it very obvious if there were any money spent in the way that it shouldn't have been? Are we so convinced that there aren't other ways to make? I'm just saying, I'm not the posture here of the various actors is very odd. You have, someone who had a relationship with the person involved, coming to his defense in a way that seems like sort of credible, but also this accusation that, you can't be bribed usually unless there's some evidence. It doesn't mean you absolutely did the thing that you're being accused of, but unless there's some evidence that would reflect poorly on you. So I don't know. It is.
Yeah, I don't buy this guy's defense of Prince Andrew at all, because, I mean, what kind of happened is that Prince Andrew has taken a lot of heat for this. So maybe they were like, no, we're not going to pay you, or, they just tried to ignore Epstein, and then this information kind of leaked out, right? That doesn't mean there was nothing improper. That's kind of what happened. So I don't buy that as like, oh, Prince Andrew is necessarily innocent. I mean, like he paid for his public association with Epstein, based on some information about that. So that could just be, maybe they didn't pay Epstein and then this happened, or that doesn't necessarily mean that he's innocent. So I don't get that part of it necessarily.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, Virginia Giuffre's lawsuit against Alan Dershowitz has been dismissed, according to the New York Times. Giuffre, who accused the law professor of sexually assaulting her when she was a teenager, now says she may have made a mistake. And so I wanted to bring this up because we interviewed Alan Dershowitz. It was me and Ryan Grimm and Emily Jashinsky a few weeks ago. And I would describe it as it was pretty aggressive questioning, frankly. So I want to set the record straight with all fairness to Alan Dershowitz. And he took the questions. He answered all of them. He was happy to stay and have that interview go as long as it could and answer everything he was asked. But I think a lot of people had questions about his involvement with Epstein based on that. So it's importantly, I think, I want to point out here, so Virginia Giuffre, who has previously accused him of sexual misconduct with respect to in relation to the Epstein stuff, she's saying pretty unequivocally that she thinks she misremembered that, and she is not standing by statements she made about Alan Dershowitz. So I think in all fairness to him, it is important to publicize, given how critical we were of him, that she says that she is walking that back as an outcome to their litigation.
What do you attribute the turnaround? And here's why I'm asking. Mm-hmm. There can be incentives on both sides to make an accusation that's false and to retract an accusation that's real. So I have no idea what happened. The only people who know what happened are Virginia, and Dershowitz. Mm-hmm. However, we have seen certain instances which have raised the public eye of Donald Trump's first wife making accusations for years, writing about it in her book, and then retracting it when Donald Trump ran for president. And there were people who said the implication was that he basically paid her off so that he wouldn't have to deal with those kinds of allegations in the context of his own presidential run when he was getting all these other accusations from other women as well. And so I wouldn't weigh in either way, because again, none of us have personal knowledge of it, but I don't think it's necessarily exculpatory when an alleged victim retracts.
Yeah, but in the Trump case, I mean, right, it could be either way. It could be she exaggerated those claims in the context of a divorce settlement where tons and tons and tons of money was at stake, right? So we don't know whether that was where the exaggeration was taking place, or like, yeah, I totally hear you. Or maybe it was true and then she had incentive to walk it back. Look, but I think. Frankly, I think like members of the public, journalists, if the accuser recants in that strong language like she has here and says, no, I think I misremembered this, I am no longer making this accusation, I think from a due process standpoint, from a presumption of innocence standpoint, I think the responsible thing to do is to accept what she is saying now as that's the word on what happened. I don't see that feels right. Maybe that's unsatisfying, but that feels like the most fair thing. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. No, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Well, a lawsuit between Dershowitz and CNN is set to take place in May of 2023. In his lawsuit, Dershowitz accuses CNN of defamation, alleging that the network repeatedly aired a, quote, deceptively edited clip of his defense of former President Trump during the first impeachment trial. So, we'll have to see about that. Another one of those kind of high-profile defamation lawsuits against a mainstream media company, which often have kind of, fraught issues because opinion statements are protected. It has to be an assertion of fact. There has to be actual malice involved, et cetera, and so on and so forth. But that, again, I don't know. I haven't looked closely enough. Maybe they edited him in such a way that it is clearly defamatory or malicious. But we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, look, as the news gets more opinion based, and the public appetite seems to be for skewed media coverage on both sides of the aisle. People want to take the most popular shows are shows like Tucker Carlson, where it's not just straight news as it is opinion. I wonder if we're going to see an increasing number of these defamation suits, because it does seem to be perhaps the only way to keep folks in line. My concern, however, is then, who has the resources to actually sue and get their record corrected about them, and who doesn't? And are we going to see justice and corrected records for people who are affluent, while, regular people are routinely smeared by these kinds of institutions?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
and
a
higher
good question.
profile people on Twitter and social media and things like that. You see it all the time.
Yeah, although sometimes we see examples of people who were not high profile people until the media came for them, and then they think like the Covington kids or people of that nature. So. And in a lot of these cases, there ends up being some kind of settlement, which doesn't necessarily mean that it was defamation or would have proved to be defamation, but it was more convenient for the company and for the person, to reach some agreement where they don't even get to that point. So we will have to see. We'll have more Rising right after this.